I arrived at the mansion, and my daughter said out loud, "Who let this old lady in? She's like a pest. She just keeps coming back." I didn't answer. The security guards came running to escort them out. Not me. They couldn't understand what had just happened. Victoria stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by her friends. All of them wore expensive designer dresses and jewelry that sparkled under the afternoon light. She looked at me as if I were dust on her shoe, as if my presence dirtied the air she breathed. Her lips curled into a cold smile, the one I knew so well, the same smile she gave me the day she threw me out of her life. "Mum," she said, dragging the word out as if it burned her mouth. "What are you doing here again? Don't you ever get tired of humiliating yourself?" Her friends laughed. One of them, a thin woman with perfectly straight blonde hair, whispered something into another's ear. They all looked at me as if I were a pathetic show, a lost old woman who didn't know when to leave. I stood still. I didn't say a thing. I just held my purse with both hands and looked at all of them, one by one, without rushing. Victoria took a step toward me. "You know what? I'm done. I'm going to call security to get you out of here once and for all. This is too much. You can't keep showing up here as if you have some kind of right." She raised her hand and snapped her fingers. 2 security guards appeared from the main entrance. They were large, uniformed men with serious expressions. They walked quickly toward us. Victoria pointed at me with contempt. "Get her out of here. I don't want to see her prowling around my house again." The guards approached. But not me. They stopped in front of Victoria. One of them, the tallest one, cleared his throat. "Miss Diaz, we regret to inform you that you and your guests must leave the property." Silence dropped like a stone. Victoria blinked. "What did you say?" The guard did not look her in the eye. He kept his gaze straight ahead, professional, firm. "This property belongs to Mrs. Eleanor Diaz. She is the legitimate owner. You do not have authorization to be here without her consent." The words floated in the air like thick smoke. No one moved, no one breathed. Victoria looked at me. Her eyes were wide open, full of confusion, of rage, of something that looked like fear. "What? What is he saying?" I still didn't speak. I just looked at her, calm, serene. The second guard stepped forward. "Miss, please come with us to the exit. If you wish to discuss this matter, you may do so through the corresponding legal channels." One of Victoria's friends let out a nervous laugh. "This has to be a joke." But no one else laughed. The atmosphere had changed. The afternoon light seemed colder now, the shadows longer. Victoria took a step back. "No, no. This can't be real. This house is mine. Robert gave it to me. He promised me that." "Mr. Robert Cantero is not the owner of this residence," the guard interrupted. "The deed has been in Mrs. Eleanor Diaz's name for 6 months." 6 months. That was the truth. I had bought the mansion in silence, without anyone knowing. I had waited for the right moment, and that moment had arrived. Victoria looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, as if suddenly I were someone else. "You? You bought this? With what money? You have nothing. You are a nobody." I didn't reply. Words were no longer necessary. The guard extended his hand toward the door. "Miss, please." Victoria's friends began to move. They picked up their purses. They adjusted their shoes. They mumbled quick apologies and walked toward the exit with their heads down. None of them looked back. None of them said anything else. Victoria remained standing in the middle of the living room. Her face had lost all color. Her hands were trembling. "This can't be happening. It can't be." The guard waited in silence, patient, firm. Finally, she walked toward the door, slowly, as if every step hurt. Before leaving, she stopped and looked at me one last time. This is not going to end here. The door closed behind her with a soft sound, definitive. I was left alone in the living room. The silence was complete. I could hear my own breathing, the slow beat of my heart. I walked toward the window and looked outside. I saw Victoria and her friends get into their cars, drive away down the stone path, and disappear behind the trees. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I only felt weariness, an old, deep weariness that I had been carrying in my bones for years. I sat down in one of the armchairs, the one I had always liked, the one by the large window. The fabric was soft under my hands. Everything in this house was beautiful. Everything was perfect. But none of that really mattered. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I let the tears come. I didn't cry for Victoria. I didn't cry for what had just happened. I cried for everything I had lost before getting here, for the years I would never get back, for the daughter I once knew and who no longer existed. The following days were strange. The mansion was silent, a silence that I had bought with years of work, with sacrifice, with sleepless nights. I walked through the empty hallways, and every step echoed against the walls. It was mine. Everything was mine. But I still felt like I was visiting someone else's house. The staff arrived on the third day. A woman named Martha Andrade knocked on the door at the hour of 0:08. She was the housekeeper who had worked there for years. Her face was tired, the face of someone who has seen too much and prefers not to talk about it. She looked at me with respect, but also with curiosity. "Mrs. Diaz," she said, bowing her head. "I came to formally introduce myself. I'm Martha. I've taken care of this house for 5 years. If you wish for me to continue, I would be honored to serve you." I told her yes. I needed someone to keep this place running while I decided what to do with it. Martha nodded and entered with quiet steps. She knew every corner of that house better than I did. She made me coffee without me asking. She asked if I needed anything else. I told her no. When she left to clean the second floor, I was alone again in the living room. I picked up my phone and checked the messages. There were 3 from Victoria. I didn't open them. I knew what they would say. Rage, accusations, empty threats. I put the phone away and drank my coffee in silence. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. Martha went to open it. I heard voices at the entrance. One of them was loud, sharp, furious. I recognized that voice immediately. It was Victoria. I got up from the armchair and walked toward the foyer. There she was, standing in front of Martha, her face red and her fists clenched. She was wearing a fitted black dress and high heels that clacked against the marble floor. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "You," she said, pointing a finger at me. "What kind of dirty game are you playing?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. Martha stepped aside, uncomfortable, and disappeared toward the kitchen. Victoria took a step toward me. "How did you get this house? Who did you trick? Who did you lie to?" Her voice trembled with rage. "This house is mine. Robert promised it to me. He told me it would be mine when we got married." "Robert wasn't the owner," I said calmly, "and you were never his wife." Victoria clenched her jaw. "That doesn't matter. I live here. I've been here for 2 years. You can't just show up and steal everything from me." "I didn't steal anything from you," I said, looking her in the eyes. "I bought this property legally. I paid every dollar with my own money. Money I earned working. Something you wouldn't understand." Her cheeks reddened even more. "Working? You don't have any money. You never had anything. You were always poor. You were always a burden. The words hit me, but I didn't move. I didn't back down. I had heard worse things. I had survived worse things. Think what you want, I said. But this house is mine, and I need you to move your things out in the next 3 days. Victoria gasped. 3 days? Are you kidding me? I have nowhere to go. You have Robert, I said. He has other properties. I'm sure he'll take you in. Something changed in her expression. A shadow of doubt crossed her face. How do you know that? I know a lot of things, I replied. More than you imagine. Victoria took a step back. She looked at me as if trying to decipher a riddle. What else did you do? What else did you buy? I didn't answer. I just held her gaze. She let out a bitter laugh. This is a nightmare. It has to be. You can't have that much money. It's impossible. Unless what? She stopped. Her eyes narrowed. Unless you did something illegal. I didn't do anything illegal, I said with a firm voice. Everything I have, I got honestly. Something you can't say about yourself. What is that supposed to mean? It means I know how you live. I know where your money comes from. I know that Robert is married to another woman. I know that you are just his mistress. And I know that he is losing everything he has. The silence that followed was brutal. Victoria looked at me as if I had pulled the floor out from under her feet. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Robert has debts, I continued. Big debts, with dangerous people. And when he can't pay, they will come for everything he owns, including the properties where you thought you were going to live forever. Victoria shook her head. You're lying. You're making this up to hurt me. I'm not lying, I said. And I don't need to make anything up. The truth is enough. She backed away toward the door. Her hands were trembling. I don't believe you. I can't believe you. You don't have to believe me, I said. But in 3 days, I want this house empty. If you don't do it voluntarily, the lawyers will take care of it. Victoria opened her mouth to say something else, but she stopped. She looked at me one last time with pure hatred and slammed the door shut. The noise echoed throughout the house. I remained standing in the foyer. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, from adrenaline, from something I hadn't felt in years. Power, control, the ability to say no and have it matter. Martha appeared from the kitchen with a worried expression. Are you all right, Mrs. Diaz? I nodded. I'm fine. Thank you. That evening I sat on the back patio of the mansion. The garden was lit with soft lights that made the flowers and perfectly manicured shrubs glow. The air was cool. I could hear the distant sound of traffic, but here everything was peaceful. I thought about Victoria, about her face full of rage and confusion, about the words she had said to me. You were always a burden. Those words had lived inside me for years. I had believed them. I had accepted them as truth. But no longer. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. The air smelled of jasmine, of wet earth, of life. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive. The 3 days passed in silence. Victoria didn't come back. She didn't call. She didn't send messages. It was as if she had disappeared off the map. Martha informed me that she had come early one morning with a moving truck and had taken her things without saying a word. She didn't leave a note. She didn't leave anything. I sat in the same armchair by the window and looked at the garden. The roses were blooming. Red, white, yellow. Perfect. As if nothing had happened. As if the world kept turning regardless of the pain one carried inside. I took a cup of tea that Martha had prepared for me. It was hot and sweet. I drank it slowly, feeling the warmth go down my throat and settle in my chest. It was a simple moment, quiet. But for some reason, the tears began to fall. I don't know why I cried. Maybe for everything. Maybe for nothing. Maybe because I finally had time to do it. Martha entered the living room with silent steps. She saw me crying and stopped at the door, unsure whether to approach or leave. I motioned with my hand for her to stay. She came closer and sat in the armchair across from me. "Mrs. Diaz," she said softly, "may I ask you something?" I nodded as I wiped my cheeks with my hand. "How did you get here?" she asked. "When Miss Victoria lived here, she always spoke of you as if, well, as if you had nothing, as if you were someone unimportant. But now you are the owner of this house. How did you do it?" The question floated in the air between us. It was a fair question, a question that deserved an honest answer. "It's a long story," I said finally, "and it's not always pretty." Martha nodded. "The best stories never are." I took another sip of tea. I let the silence settle. And then, without planning it, I began to speak. "5 years ago," I said, "I had nothing. I didn't even have a place to sleep." Martha looked at me without interrupting. Her eyes were kind, patient. "Victoria threw me out of her life," I continued. "She told me I was an embarrassment, that I was ruining her reputation, that she couldn't have a poor, old mother following her everywhere. She told me never to look for her again, that, to her, I had ceased to exist." The words came out easier than I thought, as if they had been waiting for years to be spoken aloud. "I had worked my whole life to give her everything," I said. "Her father died when she was 10 years old. I was left alone with a child and no money. I worked cleaning houses, washing clothes, babysitting other people's children. I did anything so she could have food, clothes, and education, so she wouldn't lack anything." Martha nodded slowly. She knew that story. It was the story of many women. "When Victoria grew up," I continued, "she met people with money, people who lived in another world, and she wanted to be part of that world. She started being ashamed of me, of my old clothes, of my rough hands, of my accent, of everything I was." I put the cup down on the table. My hands were trembling a little. "One day she came to my apartment with an envelope full of money," I said. $5,000. She told me that was all she would give me, that it was more than I deserved, to take that money and disappear from her life forever. Martha let out a soft sigh. Her eyes shone with something that looked like pain. "I took the money," I said, "not because I wanted it, but because I had no other choice. I had no job. I had no home. My landlord had kicked me out because I couldn't pay the rent. I took those $5,000 and I left. And Victoria closed the door behind me and never looked back." Silence filled everything again. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the distant hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the beat of my own heart. "And what did you do with that money?" Martha asked softly. "I survived," I said. "I rented a small room in a neighborhood far from here, a place where no one knew me, where no one judged me. I spent the money on food, on rent, on the basics. It lasted 6 months, and when it ran out, I had to start over." I got up from the armchair and walked toward the window. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. The sky was tinged with orange and pink. It was beautiful, painful, like everything in life. "I got a job at a laundromat," I said, looking out at the garden. "I earned $8 per hour. I worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. My hands bled from the hot water and chemicals. My feet hurt so much that I couldn't sleep at night. But I kept going, because I had no other choice. Martha came closer and stood next to me. She didn't say anything. She just stood there. After a year, I continued, I had saved $3,000. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I had earned it with my own effort, and I decided to do something with it, something that could grow. I turned to look at Martha. I met a woman at the laundromat. Her name was Irene Manzano. She was older than me. She was 72 years old and still working because her social security wasn't enough. One day she told me that her son had a small cleaning business. They cleaned offices at night. But he needed help. He needed someone to invest a little money to buy more equipment and be able to take on more contracts. "And you invested your savings?" Martha asked. I nodded. "The $3,000. Everything I had." Irene told me it was risky, that I could lose everything. But I thought, I've already lost everything once. What is one more time? A small smile appeared on my lips. Irene's son's name was Joseph Manzano. He was an honest man, hard-working, and he kept his word. In 6 months, my investment had doubled. In 1 year, it had tripled. He offered me a partnership in the business, and I accepted. Martha smiled too. And that's how it all began. That's how it all began, I repeated. The business grew. We started cleaning large buildings, corporate offices, hospitals. Joseph was good at managing operations. I was good with numbers and finance. We worked well together. In 2 years, the business was worth more than $200,000. I returned to the armchair and sat down. I was tired, not physically, but emotionally. Remembering all this was like opening old wounds that had never quite healed. "We sold the business," I said. "Joseph wanted to retire, take care of his mother, and I wanted to do something bigger. I invested my share in real estate. I bought small properties in neighborhoods that were improving. I rented them out. I sold them when the price went up. I bought more, and I kept growing." "And no one knew who you were?" Martha asked. I shook my head. "I used my maiden name, Eleanor Castillo. No one was looking for me. No one asked about me. To the world, I didn't exist, and that gave me freedom." Martha was silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Did you never think of looking for your daughter? Of telling her you were doing well?" The question pierced me like an arrow. I looked at my hands, those hands that had worked so hard, that had built so much. "I thought about it every day," I said. But she had made it very clear that she didn't want me in her life, and I had to respect that, even if it killed me inside. I got up and walked toward the kitchen. I needed to move. I needed to do something with my hands. Martha followed me in silence. I filled a glass with water and drank slowly, feeling the cold liquid go down my throat. "During those years," I continued, "I lived in small places, modest apartments. I never overspent. I never bought unnecessary things. Everything I earned, I reinvested. Every dollar counted. Every decision mattered." Martha leaned against the kitchen counter. "That requires a lot of discipline." "It requires fear," I said honestly. "Fear of having nothing again. Fear of ending up on the street. That fear never left. Even now, with everything I have, I still feel that fear some nights." I put the glass in the sink and turned toward her. 3 years ago, one of my contacts in real estate told me about an opportunity. An entrepreneur named Robert Cantero was selling several properties. He had financial problems. He needed cash fast. One of those properties was this mansion. Martha's eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Roberts sold this house?" I nodded. "He didn't make it public. It was a private sale. Discreet. He didn't want anyone to know he was in trouble. I offered to pay in cash. $1,200,000. Less than the property was worth, but more than he could get at that moment. And he accepted, Martha said. He accepted, I confirmed. We signed the papers in secret. He continued living here for a while, paying me rent. I didn't need the house. I just wanted it as an investment. But then I found out something that changed everything. I paused. The words that followed were difficult to say. I found out that Robert had promised this house to someone, to a young woman who was his mistress, a woman named Victoria Diaz. Silence filled the kitchen. Martha stared at me with wide eyes. At first, I didn't make the connection, I said. Diaz is a common last name. But then I saw a photograph Robert had in his office. It was her, my daughter. Older, different. But it was her, living in my house, believing it was hers. Martha shook her head slowly. My goodness. I told Robert that I needed him to vacate the property, I continued. He asked me for 6 more months. He said he needed time to find another place. I agreed, but he never did. Instead, he told Victoria the house was hers, that he had given it to her. He lied. I walked back to the living room. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The teacup on the table, the armchair by the window, the orange light of the sunset coming through the glass. I sat down again and closed my eyes. When the 6 months were up, I said, I asked Robert to leave. He said he needed more time. I said no. Then I sent my lawyers. They gave him 30 days. He left. But Victoria stayed. She didn't know the house wasn't hers? Martha asked, sitting across from me again. Robert never told her, I replied. He simply disappeared. He left her believing that everything was the same as before, and she continued living here as if nothing had changed. I opened my eyes and looked at Martha. I could have kicked her out immediately. Legally, I had every right. But I didn't. I waited. I watched. I wanted to understand who my daughter had become, what kind of life she was living, if she was happy, if it was worth trying to get close again. And what did you find out? Martha asked softly. I found out that she hadn't changed, I said, my voice breaking. She was still the same person who threw me out 5 years ago. Arrogant, cruel, empty. She lived off the generosity of a married man who used her when it was convenient. She didn't work. She didn't do anything productive. She just spent money that wasn't hers and surrounded herself with people as superficial as she was. Tears fell down my cheeks again. And even so, I loved her. Because she was my daughter. Because I had carried her in my womb. Because I had given her everything I had. Because a part of me still remembered the girl she used to be. Martha reached out and put her hand on mine. She didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. I decided to show up here, I continued. I decided it was time for her to know the truth. Not for revenge, not to make her suffer, but because I needed to close that chapter of my life. I needed to look her in the eyes one last time and know that I had done everything I could. And you came, Martha said. And I came, I repeated. And she called me a pest. She told me I kept coming back, as if I were a nuisance, as if my existence was a problem she had to solve. I shook my head. At that moment, I understood that there was nothing to save, that the daughter I knew had died a long time ago, and that the woman standing in front of me was a stranger. Martha squeezed my hand. I am so sorry, Mrs. Diaz. Me too, I whispered. We sat in silence as the daylight slowly faded. The shadows lengthened across the floor. The air grew cold. Outside, the birds sang their last song before night came. "Do you know what the saddest thing is?" I said after a long time. "She never asked me how I was. She never asked me if I had a place to sleep, if I had food, if I was sick. Nothing. To her, I simply ceased to exist the day she gave me that money." "Some people cannot see beyond themselves," Martha said. "It is not your fault." "I know," I said, "but it hurts anyway." I wiped the tears with the back of my hand. After she threw me out, I spent nights sleeping in bus stations, on park benches, in homeless shelters. I was 65 years old. I was tired. I had pains in my knees, in my back, in my hands. There were days when I didn't want to get up, days when I thought it would be easier to just give up. "But you didn't," Martha said. "I didn't," I confirmed. Because deep down, I still had hope. Hope that one day Victoria would look for me, that she would regret it, that she would tell me she was sorry, that hope kept me alive when nothing else did. I got up from the armchair and walked toward the window. The garden lights had turned on automatically. Everything glowed softly in the darkness. "But that hope also hurt me," I said, "because it prevented me from fully moving on. It kept me tied to a past that was never going to come back." Martha left that night after preparing my dinner. I was left alone in the mansion, walking through the empty hallways, touching the walls, feeling the weight of everything I had built. It was strange to be there. It was my house, but it didn't feel like a home. Maybe it never would. I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned for hours, looking at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house. Every creak, every sigh of the wind against the windows. Everything kept me awake. At the hour of 0:03, my phone rang. The screen shone in the dark. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, but finally answered. "Hello?" "Mum." Victoria's voice sounded different, lower, more controlled, but still loaded with venom. I didn't say anything. I just waited. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Now." "It's the hour of 0:03, I replied. "I don't care. I need to understand what's happening. I need to know how you did this." I sat up in bed and turned on the nightstand lamp. The light hurt my eyes for a moment. "Victoria, all of this." Her voice trembled. "The house, the money. How did you get all of this? You had nothing, you were a nobody. And now you show up as if you were a millionaire." "I'm not a millionaire," I said calmly. "But I have enough." "Enough for what? To ruin my life? To take everything I have?" "I didn't take anything from you," I said. "You never had anything that was really yours. Robert lied to you. He made you believe that house was yours. But it never was." I heard her heavy breathing on the other end of the line. "Robert promised me that house. He promised me." "Robert is a liar," I said. "And you were naive enough to believe him. He's married, Victoria. He has a wife and 2 kids. You were just his distraction, his secret." Silence stretched between us like an abyss. "How do you know that?" she finally asked. "Because I did my homework," I replied. "Because I investigated before buying that property. Because I don't trust people's words. I trust the facts." "You're a liar," she said, her voice choked. "You're making all this up to hurt me." "I don't need to make anything up," I said. "The truth is enough. And if you don't believe me, ask Robert. Ask him where he's been all those nights he said he had business meetings. Ask him why he never introduced you to his family. Ask him why he never posted a single photograph with you on his social media. Victoria didn't answer. I could hear her breathing. Fast. Short. But that's not all, I continued. My voice was cold now, emotionless. I also bought something else. Something that will interest you. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. I bought the building where Robert has his main office, I said. The entire building. I acquired it 2 months ago. And now I am his landlady. His lease agreement expires in 3 weeks. And I'm not going to renew it. The silence was absolute. Why would you do that? She asked, her voice trembling. Why do you hate me so much? I don't hate you, I said. And it was true. But I'm also not going to let you keep hurting me. I am no longer the woman you threw out 5 years ago. I am no longer weak. You can no longer walk all over me. This is revenge, she said. This is pure revenge. No, I replied. This is justice. There is a difference. There is no difference, she yelled. You are destroying my life because you are resentful, because you couldn't be anything without me feeling sorry for you. Her words hit me like punches, but they didn't hurt like before. They no longer had the same power over me. I gave you $5,000, she continued. I gave you more than you deserved. And now you come to take everything from me. You are ungrateful. You are a bad mother. A bad mother, I repeated. The rage began to grow inside me, a rage that had been dormant for years. I worked 3 jobs so you could have new shoes when you were a child. I spent sleepless nights taking care of you when you were sick. I sold my wedding rings to pay for your college. I gave you everything I had. Everything, and you threw me out like I was trash. Because you were an embarrassment, she said. Because you embarrassed me in front of my friends. Because I couldn't bring anyone home without them seeing my mother in old clothes and with rough hands. Those rough hands fed you, I said with a firm voice. Those old clothes got dirty so yours could be clean. And if that embarrassed you, then the problem was never me. The problem was always you. Victoria let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You were always like that, always playing the victim, always blaming me for your failures. I didn't fail, I said. I survived. You, poverty, loneliness, everything. And now I'm here, standing, strong, while you are calling me at the hour of 3 minutes past 0 because your world is falling apart. My world is not falling apart, she said, but her voice sounded hollow. No, I said. Ask Robert how much he owes the banks. Ask him what will happen when he can't pay. And ask yourself what you're going to do when he can no longer support you. He loves me, she said weakly. He told me we would get married. He lied to you, I said. Just like he lied to his wife. Just like he has lied to all the women he has had before you. The silence returned, heavier this time, more definitive. Why are you doing this? She asked. Her voice was small now, like a lost child's. What do you want from me? I don't want anything, I said. Not anymore. I just want you to know that I exist, that I'm still here, and that I'm not going to apologize for who I am. You were always selfish, she said. You always thought only of yourself. I laughed. It was a bitter laugh that came from a deep, dark place inside me. Selfish? I gave you my whole life, Victoria. My whole life. And you threw it in the trash as if it were worth nothing. Because it wasn't worth anything, she said. Her voice was cold again. Cruel. You are worthless. You never were. And all the money in the world isn't going to change that. The words floated in the air, pure venom, designed to destroy, but they no longer destroyed me. You're right, I said calmly. Money doesn't change who I am. I am still the same woman who scrubbed floors so you could eat. The same woman who cried alone in empty rooms because her daughter had abandoned her. The same woman who survived everything you threw at me. I paused. But now I am also the woman who can kick you out of her house. The woman who can shut down your lover's business. The woman who has the power. And that terrifies you, doesn't it? Victoria didn't answer. You have 3 weeks to find another place, I said. After that, I don't want to hear from you again. I don't want your calls. I don't want your excuses. I don't want anything that comes from you. Mum. Don't call me that, I interrupted her. You lost that right 5 years ago. To you, I am Eleanor. Nothing more. I hung up the phone. My hands were trembling. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I remained sitting in bed, looking at the dark phone in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. I had said everything I needed to say. I had released all the pain, all the rage, all the frustration that I had held for years. And now I felt empty, hollow, as if something inside me had died. I lay down again and turned off the light. The darkness enveloped me. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but the tears came again. Silent, endless. I cried for the daughter I had lost, for the relationship we would never have, for all the wasted years, for all the love I had given and that was never returned. And I cried for myself, for the woman I had been, for the woman I could have been, for the woman I now was. The following days passed slowly. Martha came every morning. She prepared breakfast, cleaned the house, and then left. I spent the hours walking in the garden, sitting on the patio, watching the sky change colour. I didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. One afternoon, Martha handed me an envelope. "This arrived for you, Mrs. Diaz." I opened it. It was an invitation, elegant, printed on thick paper with gold lettering. The City Chamber of Commerce was organising a gala dinner to recognise successful entrepreneurs in the region. My name was on the list of honorees. "Are you going?" Martha asked. I looked at the invitation. The date was in 2 weeks. I had never been to that kind of event. I had always kept myself in the shadows, invisible, safe. But something in me had changed. I no longer wanted to hide. "Yes," I said. "I am going." Martha smiled. "You'll need a dress." She was right. I didn't have anything appropriate for a gala dinner. The next day, Martha took me to a boutique downtown. It was the type of place I had never entered before. Everything was expensive, elegant, intimidating. But I walked in with my head held high. A young saleswoman approached. She looked me up and down with an expression I couldn't decipher. "How can I help you?" "I need a dress for a formal dinner," I said. She nodded and showed me several dresses. All of them were beautiful. But there was one that caught my attention. It was wine-coloured, simple, but elegant, without too many embellishments. Perfect. I tried it on. It fit me well. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized myself. It was me, but different, stronger, more confident. "It's perfect," Martha said from outside the dressing room. I bought the dress. I also bought shoes and a small purse. I spent more money than I had ever spent on clothes, but I didn't feel guilty. For the first time in my life, I felt like I deserved it. The night of the gala arrived. Martha helped me get ready. She styled my hair. She helped me with my makeup. When she finished, I looked at myself in the mirror and couldn't help but smile. I looked good. I felt good. I arrived at the hotel where the event was taking place. The ballroom was full of people, Entrepreneurs, politicians, important people in the city, all elegantly dressed, talking in groups, laughing. I felt out of place for a moment, but I took a deep breath and walked in. An older man approached. "Mrs. Eleanor Diaz." I nodded. "I am Nicholas Cantero, President of the Chamber of Commerce. It is an honor to have you here. Your story is inspiring. A woman who built an empire from scratch. Admirable." He shook my hand. His grip was firm, sincere. We talked for a few minutes. He introduced me to other people. Everyone was kind, respectful. They treated me as if I were someone important, and perhaps I was. The dinner began. I was seated at a table near the front. The food was exquisite. The wine was good. The conversations were interesting. Everything was perfect. Until I saw her. Victoria. She was on the other side of the room, sitting at a more distant table. She was wearing a fitted black dress, and her hair was styled in an elegant bun. She was with Robert. He was wearing a grey suit and smiling as if nothing bad was happening in his life. Our eyes met. Victoria froze. Her face lost all colour. Robert followed her gaze and saw me. His smile disappeared. I looked away. I wasn't going to let them ruin this night. After dinner, the recognitions began. Several entrepreneurs were called to the stage. Each one received a plaque and words of praise. I waited my turn, my heart beating fast. "And now," Nicholas Cantero said from the podium, "we want to recognize an extraordinary woman, someone who faced adversity with courage and built a successful business from nothing. A woman who represents the true entrepreneurial spirit. Mrs. Eleanor Diaz, please come forward." I stood up. My legs trembled a little, but I walked toward the stage with my head held high. The entire room applauded. I climbed the steps and took the plaque Nicholas handed me. "Mrs. Diaz," he said into the microphone, "would you like to say a few words?" I hadn't planned on speaking, but something in me wanted to. I took the microphone and looked at the audience. All eyes were on me, including Victoria's. "Thank you," I began. My voice sounded stronger than I expected. "This recognition means a lot to me, not because I need external validation, but because it represents all the work I have done, all the sacrifice, all the sleepless nights, all the times I wanted to give up, but I didn't." I paused. I looked for Victoria in the crowd. She was staring at me intently. Her face was a mask of shock and something else, maybe shame. "I started with nothing," I continued. "Less than nothing. I was rejected by the people I loved most. I was humiliated. I was called a nuisance. I was told I was worthless, that I would never be anyone." My voice cracked a little, but I continued. But I decided that those voices would not define me. I decided that I would define my own worth. And I worked. I worked harder than I thought possible. And here I am, standing in front of all of you, proud of what I have built, proud of who I am. The applause was deafening. People stood up. Nicholas shook my hand again and congratulated me. I walked off the stage with tears in my eyes, but they were tears of joy, of triumph. I returned to my table. Several people approached to congratulate me, to ask for advice, to tell me that my story had inspired them. I smiled and thanked them, but part of me was distracted, looking for Victoria with my eyes. I found her. She was standing near the exit, talking to Robert. He looked annoyed. She looked devastated. They were talking in low voices, but it was obvious they were arguing. I decided not to go toward them. I didn't need another confrontation. I had already said everything I needed to say. But then Victoria did something unexpected. She separated from Robert and walked toward me. My muscles tensed. I didn't know what to expect. "I need to talk to you," she said when she reached my side. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Not here," I said, looking around. "Not tonight." "Please," she said. And there was something in her eyes that I hadn't seen in years, vulnerability. I sighed. "All right, outside." We walked out onto the hotel balcony. The night air was cool. We could hear the distant noise of traffic. The city lights shone below. Victoria stood by the railing, looking out at the city. I waited. I let her speak first. "I didn't know," she finally said. "I didn't know any of this. About your business. About your success." I thought. "Did you think I was dead in a ditch somewhere?" I said, emotionlessly. She winced. "No, I don't know what I thought. I guess I didn't think about you at all." "That's more honest," I said. Victoria turned to look at me. Her eyes were red. "Robert lied to me about everything. He told me the house was mine. He told me we would get married. He told me he loved me. And it was all a lie." "I know," I said. "How did you know?" she asked. "Because I did my homework," I replied. "Because I don't trust anyone's promises. Because I learned that the only person I can trust is myself." Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her makeup was starting to run. "What am I going to do now? I don't have a house. I don't have any money. I have nothing." "You have what I had 5 years ago," I said. "A chance to start over." She looked at me in disbelief. "How can you say that? You are taking everything from me." "I am not taking anything from you," I said firmly. "I am taking back what is mine. There is a difference." "It's the same thing," she said. "It is not," I replied. "And if you can't see that, then you haven't learned anything." Victoria turned back to the city. Silence. Long. Heavy. "I'm sorry," she finally said. The words came out so low I barely heard them. I froze. "What did you say?" "I said I'm sorry," she repeated a little louder. "I'm sorry I threw you out. I'm sorry I treated you like you were worthless. I'm sorry. For everything. The words I had waited 5 years to hear. The words I had dreamed of. The words I thought would heal me. But I felt nothing." "It's too late," I said. Victoria turned abruptly. "What?" "It's too late," I repeated. "You can't apologize now that you've lost everything and expect me to rescue you. It doesn't work that way." Victoria looked at me as if I had slapped her. Her lips were trembling. "Then what? Did you just come to destroy me? To watch me fall?" "I didn't come to do anything," I said calmly. "You fell on your own. I just kept living my life." "You bought my house," she said, her voice trembling. "You bought Robert's building. That is not just living your life." "That's investment," I corrected. "I bought properties that had good value. Whether the fact that you were involved is coincidence or destiny, I don't know. But I didn't do it to hurt you." "I don't believe you," she said. A tear rolled down her cheek. "I can't believe you." "You don't need to believe me," I said. "The truth is the truth, whether you believe it or not." Victoria wiped her cheek with rage. "You were always like that. Always so cold, so distant, as if nothing mattered to you." Her words pierced me. Cold, distant. That was how she saw me, after everything I had done for her, after all the sacrifices. "Everything mattered to me," I said in a low but firm voice. "You mattered to me. Too much. So much that I forgot about myself. So much that I let you walk all over me and kept coming back. But no longer. I am no longer that woman. Then who are you? She asked bitterly. A heartless millionaire. I am a survivor, I replied. I am someone who learned that love is not enough if it is not reciprocated, that forgiveness does not mean accepting abuse, that family is not just blood. Victoria shook her head. That is just an excuse to justify your cruelty. Cruelty? I repeated. The rage began to grow inside me again. I spent nights on the street. I ate from the trash when I didn't have any money. I worked until my hands bled. And all that time you were here, living in luxury, not worrying if I was alive or dead. And now you call me cruel. My voice had risen. Several people on the balcony were looking at us. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I didn't know, Victoria said weakly. I didn't know you were on the street. Why did you never ask? I said. You never cared enough to find out. Silence fell between us, heavy as a tombstone. What do you want from me? She finally asked. Her voice sounded tired, defeated. What do I have to do for this to end? Nothing, I said. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to go your way, and I will go mine. No more contact, no more calls, no more drama. And that's it? She asked, incredulous. We just end like this, after everything? After everything, I repeated. Yes, that is how it ends. Victoria stared at me for a long moment. Then she said something I never expected to hear. At least Robert loves me. At least I have someone. You don't have anyone. You are completely alone. The words were designed to hurt, to find the weak point and stab it there. And for a second, they worked. I felt the sting of pain. But then something changed. I looked at my daughter, at this woman who had been my entire life for so many years, and I realized something. I didn't care what she thought. I didn't care what she said. She no longer had power over me. You're right, I said calmly. I am alone. And you know what? I prefer to be alone and at peace than accompanied and miserable. I prefer my authentic solitude to your fake company. I prefer to sleep peacefully knowing I owe nothing to anyone than to live surrounded by people who only want me for what they can get from me. Victoria blinked, surprised by my response. Robert doesn't love you, I continued. He uses you, and you allow it because you are afraid to be alone, because you have built your worth around the men who support you. I built my worth on my work, on my integrity, on my ability to get up every time I fell. And that is a worth that no one can take from me. I approached her. We looked directly into each other's eyes. You can keep Robert if you want. You can continue living that lie. But don't use me as an excuse when everything falls apart. Because this is not my fault. It never was. I took a step back. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a celebration to return to. I turned and walked toward the balcony door. But before entering, I heard her voice one last time. I always knew you hated me. I stopped. I didn't turn around. I just spoke into the night. I never hated you. That's the problem. I never could. But I don't love you like before anymore, and I think that is worse for you. I entered the ballroom and left Victoria alone on the balcony. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I spoke with more people. I smiled. I thanked them for the compliments. But my mind was elsewhere. On those last words with my daughter. On the way her eyes had filled with tears when I told her I didn't love her like before anymore. It wasn't completely true. There was still love, but it was different now. It was the love you have for something you lost a long time ago, the love for a ghost, for a memory of what could have been, but never was. When the gala ended, I left the hotel. My chauffeur was waiting for me outside. He was an older man named Matthew that I had hired a few months ago. He was discreet, punctual, silent, perfect. "Home, Mrs. Diaz?" he asked. I nodded. I got into the car and leaned back in the seat. I closed my eyes as we drove through the city streets. The lights passed like shooting stars behind my closed eyelids. My phone vibrated. A message. I ignored it. Then another, and another. Finally, I took it out of my purse and looked at the screen. They were from Victoria. "Please, don't do this. I need time. I'm begging you. I have nowhere to go. Mum, please." I looked at the messages for a long moment. I felt the familiar weight of guilt trying to settle in my chest, the old instinct to give in, to rescue, to put her needs before mine. But I didn't. I turned off the phone and put it back in my purse. When I arrived at the mansion, the garden lights were on. Everything looked peaceful, beautiful. I went inside and walked directly to my bedroom. I took off the dress, the shoes, the jewelry. I washed my face, removing the makeup with slow, deliberate movements. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face without makeup, the lines around my eyes, the grey hair. 65 years of life marked in every wrinkle, in every spot, in every sign of weariness. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw a woman who had survived everything life had thrown at her and was still standing. I put on my nightgown and lay down in bed. The room was in absolute silence. I could only hear my own breathing, my own heart beating steady and constant. I thought about Victoria again, about her desperate messages, about her face when I told her I didn't love her like before anymore. Part of me wanted to reply, wanted to tell her that everything would be fine, that I would help her, that I would always be her mother no matter what. But another part of me, the part that had grown during these 5 years, the part that had learned to value herself, told me no, that I had given enough, that it was time to let her find her own way, just as I had had to find mine. I closed my eyes. Sleep did not come easily. I tossed and turned for hours, thinking, remembering, feeling. But eventually, in the early hours of the morning, I finally fell asleep. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't dream of anything. Just quiet darkness, silent peace. I woke up with the sun coming through the window. Martha was already in the house. I could hear her in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air. I got up slowly. My body was tired, but my mind was clear. I put on comfortable clothes and went down to the kitchen. "Good morning, Mrs. Diaz," Martha said with a smile. "How was the gala?" "It was interesting," I said, sitting on one of the stools by the counter. Martha served me coffee and toast. I ate in silence, enjoying the simplicity of the moment. "Are you all right?" Martha asked after a while. I looked at her. This woman who I barely knew, but who had been kinder to me in these last few months than my own daughter in years. "Yes," I said. "I think so." 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of silence. Victoria didn't write again. She didn't call. It was as if she had disappeared. Part of me wondered where she was, how she was, but I didn't look for her. I didn't ask. I let the silence do its work. I continued with my routine. I got up early, had breakfast with Martha, checked my investments, made business calls. In the afternoons, I walked in the garden or read on the patio. It was a quiet, simple life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Until one morning, Martha entered the living room with the newspaper in her hand. Her face was tense. "Mrs. Diaz," she said with a worried voice, "you need to see this." I took the newspaper. In the society section, there was an article. The headline read, "Local businesswoman accused of fraud and extortion by her own daughter." My heart stopped. I read the entire article. Victoria had given an interview to the newspaper. She said that I had used illegal methods to build my fortune, that I had extorted Robert Cantero into selling me properties below their value, that I had kicked her out of her home for no reason, that I was a cruel and vengeful mother who only wanted to destroy her own daughter out of jealousy. Every word was a lie. Every accusation was false. But it was printed in black ink for the whole city to read. My hands trembled as I held the newspaper. The rage grew inside me like a wave. After everything that had happened, after everything I had given her, she was still trying to destroy me. "What are you going to do?" Martha asked. I put the newspaper on the table. I took a deep breath. I thought. I couldn't react with rage. I couldn't stoop to her level. I had to be smarter than her. "I'm going to respond," I finally said, "but not with words, with facts." I called my lawyer, a man named Valentine Manzano, Joseph's brother, my former partner. He was brilliant, meticulous, and completely loyal. I explained the situation to him. He had already seen the article. "I can sue her for defamation," he said. "We have all the documents that prove her accusations are false. Deeds, contracts, bank statements. Everything is clean and legal." "I don't want to sue her," I said. "I want something better." "What do you have in mind?" I explained my plan to him. Valentine was silent for a moment. Then he laughed. "It's perfect. I'll prepare everything." 3 days later, the same newspaper that had published Victoria's accusations published something new. A full page paid for by me. It wasn't a furious denial. It wasn't a desperate defense. It was something much more powerful. It was my story, the real one. It included photographs of my early years, me cleaning houses, me working at the laundromat, documents that showed how I had built my business step by step, dollar by dollar. Testimonials from Joseph Manzano and Irene about my work and my integrity. Copies of all the deeds and contracts, showing that every property I owned had been acquired legally and at fair market price. But the most important part was the end. A photograph of an envelope. The envelope that Victoria had given me 5 years ago with $5,000. I had kept it. And inside the advertisement, I wrote this. "This is the last thing my daughter ever gave me. $5,000, so I would disappear from her life." I took that money not because I wanted it, but because I had no other option. But I didn't spend it all. I saved $1,000 as a reminder. As proof that even at my lowest moment, I had the discipline to think about the future. That bill was the first of many that came after. And now, 5 years later, that bill is worth much more than $1,000. It is worth my dignity, my strength, my story. To the people who read the accusations against me, I invite you to verify every fact. Every document is publicly available. Every transaction was legal and transparent. I have nothing to hide because I did nothing wrong. I built my fortune with honest work, with sacrifice, and with the determination to never give up. And to my daughter, I say this, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I forgive you for the lies, for the accusations, for the pain. But forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Forgiveness means I will no longer allow you to control my life with your poison. I am moving forward. You should do the same. The reaction was immediate. Social media exploded. People shared the ad, commented, expressed their support. I received hundreds of messages from people who had lived similar situations, women who had been rejected by their families, mothers who had been abandoned by their children. All of them thanked me for telling my story, for being brave, for not hiding. The newspaper published an apology for printing Victoria's accusations without verifying the facts first. Several media outlets asked for interviews. I refused most of them. I didn't want to turn this into a media circus. I had already said what I needed to say. But there was one interview I accepted. A local radio show, hosted by a woman named Mary Andrade. She was known for doing deep, human, respectful interviews. I felt like I could trust her. I went to the studio a week later. Mary greeted me warmly. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. "Mrs. Diaz," she said, as we sat down in front of the microphones. "Thank you for coming. Your story has moved a lot of people." "Thank you for having me," I replied. The interview began. Mary asked me questions about my life, about my business, about my relationship with Victoria. I answered honestly. I didn't hide the pain. I didn't pretend that everything was fine. I talked about the loneliness, about the rejection, about the nights I cried myself to sleep. But I also talked about hope, about the strength I found within myself, about the people who helped me along the way, about the satisfaction of building something with my own hands. "What would you say to other women who are going through something similar?" Mary asked toward the end of the interview. I thought for a moment. I would tell them that the rejection of others does not define their worth, that family is not always blood. Sometimes it is the people you choose. I would tell them that it is never too late to start over. That age is not a limitation. It is an advantage because you come with experience and wisdom. And I would tell them that it is okay to be alone if that solitude is peaceful. It is better than being accompanied in toxicity. Mary nodded. Her eyes shone with unshed tears. Those are powerful words. When the interview ended, Mary hugged me. "Thank you for your courage," she whispered. "Many women needed to hear this." I left the studio feeling something strange. It wasn't exactly happiness. It wasn't sadness either. It was something in between. Acceptance, maybe, or closure. That night, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, but answered. "Eleanor Diaz." It was a woman's voice I didn't recognize. "Yes, my name is Samantha Castillo. I am Robert Cantero's wife." My heart stopped. I didn't expect this. "I know everything," she continued. Her voice was calm, but there was a steel edge to it. "About Robert and your daughter, about the lies, about everything." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "Don't apologize," she said. "You don't owe me anything. In fact, I owe you thanks. Your actions opened my eyes. I started the divorce process a week ago, and I'm taking everything that is legally mine." I was silent, not knowing what to say. "I only called so you would know that I'm not angry with you," Samantha continued, "and to tell you that I admire what you did. You defended yourself. You didn't let them walk all over you. That is something I should have done years ago." "It's never too late," I said softly. "No," she agreed. "It's never too late. Take care, Mrs. Diaz." She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand, processing the conversation. Another life touched. Another woman waking up. 2 days later, Valentine called me. "There's something you need to know," he said. "Victoria is trying to sell her story to sensationalist television programs. She's saying that you are persecuting her, that she fears for her safety." I sighed. "Of course she is. Do you want us to intervene legally?" "No," I said after thinking for a moment. "Let her. If she wants to keep digging her own hole, Let her. I'm not going to give her any more attention. Silence will be my answer. Are you sure? Completely. And so it was. Victoria appeared on 2 or 3 low-level television programs, repeating her accusations. But no one believed her anymore. The facts were there for anyone who wanted to see them. And most people had made their decision. The comments on social media were brutal toward her. They called her a liar, ungrateful, manipulative. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a bigger part simply felt nothing. I had spent all my emotional energy on her for too many years. There was nothing left to give. A month later, everything had calmed down. The media had lost interest in the story. Life returned to its tranquil rhythm. I continued to wake up every morning in my house, drink coffee with Martha, work on my businesses. The routine gave me peace. One Sunday afternoon, I was in the garden pruning the roses. It was something I had started doing myself. I liked feeling the soil under my hands, seeing how the flowers responded to the care. It was therapeutic. Martha Zabia came out of the house. Mrs. Diaz, you have a visitor. I looked up, surprised. I wasn't expecting anyone. Who is it? It's Miss Victoria. I felt as if the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I hadn't seen her since the night of the gala. We hadn't spoken since then, and now she was here. Do you want me to tell her to leave? Martha asked. I thought for a moment. I could refuse to see her. I could close that door forever. But something in me needed to know what she wanted. I needed this last meeting to close the circle completely. No, I said, taking off my gardening gloves. Tell her to come in. Martha nodded and went back into the house. I stayed in the garden, standing among the roses, waiting. Victoria appeared a few minutes later. She looked different. Her clothes were simple, without the designer labels she always wore. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. She looked tired, small, broken. We looked at each other in silence for a long moment. Thank you for seeing me, she finally said. Her voice was low, without the edge of arrogance it had always had. I didn't reply. I just waited. I came to tell you something, she continued. She took a step closer. I came to tell you that you were right. About everything. I crossed my arms over my chest. About what specifically? About Robert. About my life. About who I am. Her eyes filled with tears. I lost everything. The apartment where I was living. Robert kicked me out when his wife filed for divorce. My friends disappeared when I could no longer pay for expensive dinners and trips. I have nothing, and it's my fault. Everything is my fault. Tears began to fall down her cheeks. I spent these last few weeks living in a cheap motel, looking for a job, but no one wants to hire me. I don't have experience in anything real. I don't know how to do anything useful. I built my whole life around being pretty and pleasing rich men. And now that that is over, I am nobody. I remained silent. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be fine. But another part, the part that had learned to protect itself, stood firm. Why did you come here? I asked. What is it that you want from me? Victoria wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. I didn't come to ask you for money. I know I don't have the right to that. I came because I needed to tell you that I am sorry, truly sorry. I am sorry for everything I did to you. I am sorry I threw you out. I am sorry I treated you like trash. I am sorry I didn't value everything you did for me. Her voice broke. I'm sorry I wasn't the daughter you deserved. I'm sorry I was so selfish, so blind, so cruel. and I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to realize it. The words floated in the air between us, words I had waited years for. But now that I heard them, I didn't feel what I thought I would feel. I didn't feel victory. I didn't feel satisfaction. I only felt weariness. "What do you want me to do with that?" I asked. "Do you want me to forgive you? Do you want me to tell you that everything is fine?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "I don't expect that. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I finally understand. I finally see everything you gave me and everything I wasted." I looked at my daughter, at this woman who had been my entire world for so long, and I felt something break inside me, not from pain, but from liberation. "I forgive you," I said softly. Victoria looked up sharply. Her eyes were full of surprise. "I forgive you," I repeated, "not because you gave me a good apology, not because I truly believe you have changed. I forgive you because I need to move on, because carrying this resentment is weighing more heavily on me than on you, because I deserve peace." I paused. But forgiveness does not mean, G, that we are going to have a relationship. It does not mean that I am going to rescue you. It does not mean that everything goes back to how it was before, because it can't be. There is too much pain, too much history, too many wounds that will never fully heal. Victoria nodded slowly. More tears fell down her face. "I understand. I hope you find your way," I continued. "I hope you learn to value yourself for who you are, not for what men think of you. I hope you build something real, something that is yours, something you can be proud of." "I don't know how to do that," she said in a small voice. "I didn't know how either," I replied. "But I learned, and you can too, if you truly want to." We were silent again. The wind moved the leaves on the trees. A bird sang somewhere nearby. The world kept turning. "There is something I want to give you," I finally said. I walked into the house and came back a moment later with an envelope. I handed it to Victoria. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were $10,000 in cash. "What is this?" "It's a start," I said. "Enough for you to find a place to live. Enough for you to have time to look for work without being desperate. Enough for you to start over." Victoria looked at me with wide eyes. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," I said firmly. "But with one condition. This is the last time. I'm not going to rescue you again. What you do with this money is completely up to you. If you waste it, there is no more. If you use it wisely, maybe you will build something. But that is your decision, your responsibility." She held the envelope as if it were something sacred. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," I replied. "Just live your life. Be better than you have been. And maybe one day when both of us have healed, we can talk again. But until then, I need you to respect my space. I need time. I need peace." Victoria nodded. "I will. I promise." She walked toward the garden gate. But before leaving, she stopped and turned. "Mom." It was the first time she had called me that in years, and instead of sounding sarcastic or cruel, it sounded genuine, vulnerable. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for this opportunity, and for being the mother you were, even when I didn't deserve any of it." I didn't reply. I just nodded. Victoria left. She walked down the stone path and disappeared behind the trees. I watched her go and felt something strange in my chest. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't joy. It was something in between. Acceptance, closure, peace. Martha came out of the house and stood next to me. Are you all right, Mrs. Diaz? I smiled, a small but real smile. Yes, I am fine. That evening I sat on the patio with a cup of tea. The garden was softly lit. The stars were beginning to appear in the dark sky. Everything was peaceful, perfect. I thought about my life, about everything that had happened, about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. It wasn't the life I had imagined when I was young. It wasn't the life I had dreamed of, but it was mine, and that was enough. I had learned that family is not always blood, that self-love is more important than the love of others, that solitude can be a gift if you use it to grow, that it is never too late to start over, that forgiveness is for the giver, not the receiver. And I had learned that sometimes the greatest victory is not destroying those who hurt you. It is building a life so beautiful that their opinion no longer matters. I drank my tea in silence. The air smelled of jasmine and wet earth. I could hear the distant sound of the city, but here, in my garden, in my house, in my life, everything was peace. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time in a long time, I didn't think about the past. I didn't worry about the future. I was just present. I was just here. I was just at peace, and that, after everything that had happened, after all the storms I had survived, after all the pain and all the struggle, that was all I needed. Peace, silence, me. I opened my eyes and looked at the stars. They shone with a constant light, eternal, indifferent to the human dramas happening below. And I realized that I wanted to be like that, constant, serene, shining with my own light, without needing anyone else's approval. Martha appeared at the door. "Do you need anything else, Mrs. Diaz?" I looked at her. This woman who had been more family to me in these last few months than my own daughter in years. "No, Martha. Thank you. You can go rest." She smiled. "Good night, ma'am." "Good night." I was left alone on the patio. The world slept. But I was awake, alive, present, and for the first time in 65 years, I felt completely, absolutely free.